Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. May I get the permission from Mahasangha and dear Dhamma friends. I wish you all a very good evening. This is the second Dhamma talk of me in this Dhamma talk program. So, you may remember the first Dhamma talk, we discussed about the concentration. We learn about what is concentration and what is the importance of the concentration, why we have to develop that kind of a concentration, and what is the place the concentration has in this progressive practice. Because we know within the sevenfold purification path, we call the Satta Visuddhi, the concentration is the second step, we call the Chitta Visuddhi. That whole that stage or the Chitta Visuddhi is dedicated for developing the concentration. If we recall briefly about the last Dhamma talk, what we have discussed. As a Buddhist, we know we all have a common ultimate goal, objective, that is to achieve the Nibbana. We all believe that the Nibbana is the ultimate liberation, what we can achieve in order to achieve the end of this samsara, end of this suffering. So we all know that is the ultimate liberation for all of us. So we are trying to achieve that. So in order to achieve that ultimate liberation, one day we have to develop, we have to achieve the noble paths we call the Magga Jnana. We have to achieve that in 4 stages. So in order to achieve the liberation, the Nibbana, we have to produce these paths within ourselves. In order to generate these kind of noble paths, we have to achieve the insight knowledges within ourselves. In order to achieve those insight knowledges, we call the Vipassana Jnana, we have to do the Vipassana process, insight meditation or the Vipassana Bhavana in a very effective manner, efficient manner, in a productive manner. Otherwise, we cannot achieve these kind of insight knowledges without following the right steps, without following the right process of insight meditation. So, but in order to achieve the insight, in order to achieve the Vipassana knowledges, we have to do the Vipassana meditation in a very productive way, in an effective way. But what is Vipassana? What is this kind of insight meditation is, we have to contemplate about, we have to understand the objects as they really are. Because we have to understand about these objects, because usually we are negotiating with these objects in our day-to-day life. From the birth until we die one day, all the time we are dealing with objects. So, but we are dealing with these objects in a wrong manner. We are not understanding, we are not recognizing, realizing the true state of these objects. That's why we are having lust. That's why we are having attachments. That's why we are having sometimes envy, these kind of things, sometimes good and bad things. So we have these kind of feelings, we kind of defilements, because we are not dealing with these objects in a proper manner, in a proper manner, in a suitable manner. So during the vipassana, we are trying to rectify these things. We are trying to reverse these, or the what you call the wrong process of dealing with objects. So that is what we are doing by developing the insight meditation. But in order to achieve that, in order to do that process, vipassana process, insight meditation, we have to contemplate about the objects in a proper manner. For that, the very important requisite, or the very important thing we have to fulfill before we do the vipassana is the knowledge, what is needed to do the vipassana meditation. So what is the knowledge? We have to learn about these ultimate realities, what really exists in ourselves and what really exists in the external world, in the other living beings and in this external world. So these all are made of these realities, but we don't know about these realities. So we are not dealing with the objects in that real manner. We are not understanding what are the realities. So we have to get the knowledge about these realities, what actually in ourselves, what actually in the outside world. So we have to learn about those realities in different classification. We have to learn about the characteristics of these realities, and what are those realities, what are the main characteristics, and what are the functions of these realities, and how they exist, what are the namas, what are the mentalities, what are the rupas, what are the corp realities. And we have to learn about these things. We call that vipassana sphere, or the insight sphere, vipassana bhumi. We are learning about the realities in the nama rupa level, and we are learning about this ayatana faculty level, and we are learning about this khanda we call the aggregates, and sometimes we learn about dhatus. In these kind of classifications, we learn about these realities. So that's why we have to get that kind of a knowledge before we do the vipassana. What we have to do first is we have to learn about these things in at least to some extent. We cannot learn everything before we do the vipassana, before we begin the vipassana, but at least we should have the minimum level of understanding about this reality. Then during the vipassana process, we are applying this knowledge, what we have accumulated, what we have gained before the beginning of the vipassana. Then we are applying this knowledge, and we are contemplating the real objects, but what we have by using this knowledge. That is what we are doing during the vipassana process. Then we are trying to understand the realities in their actual manner, because we are trying to understand the real situation, real process, what is happening out there. So that is what we are doing during the vipassana. The most important requisite we have to gain before we do the vipassana meditation is we have to learn about the insight sphere. We call the vipassana bhumi. What is vipassana bhumi? We learn about the realities in like khandas. We call the aggregates, panchakhanda. Sometimes we classify these all the realities in like ayatanas. We call the faculties. And sometimes we classify and learn about these realities in the dhatu, like dhatus. So any kind of classification, and several kinds of classifications we learn before we start the insight meditation. It is very important, and it is like a must we have to do to achieve, to learn about these realities at least to some extent, at least to some level of understanding. So otherwise, without learning about these realities, without learning about these namas, rupas, mentalities and materialities, or the corp reality, we cannot, because we have to learn about those namas, rupas, khandhas, ayatanas, dhatus, and we have to learn about these materials in what are their characteristics, what are their functions, how they behave, and how they mutually support each other, how they arise, what are the causes to arise. These kind of things we have to learn to at least to some extent before we start the vipassana. Otherwise, we cannot actually do the right vipassana meditation. Then sometimes you can do some contemplating about the objects what you are taking, but you are not doing the real vipassana if you don't have the knowledge about the vipassana sphere or the insight sphere. You are just doing some contemplating, but you are not doing the real vipassana, and actually at the end of the day you will not achieve the vipassana knowledges, insight knowledges, because you have not done the real process. Then ultimately you will not be able to achieve the noble paths, then you will not achieve the liberation. Okay, now we know we have to contemplate, we have to analyze these objects what we are taking every day, every moment, to understand the real side of them, because what are their real characteristics, what they actually from what they actually made of. These kinds of we have to analyze, we have to contemplate about based on the knowledge what we have gained before we start the vipassana. To apply this practically during the vipassana process, we have to we have to negotiate with the objects. So during this negotiation, during this vipassana process, in order to understand the objects what we are taking by our mind, in order to understand about the real situation of these realities, we have to spend much time with these objects. Otherwise, we cannot understand the real side of these objects. We have to analyze these objects in different angles. In order to do that, we have to spend more time with these objects. Otherwise, we will not be able to analyze and get a full understanding about this object if we are jumping one object to another in a very fast manner. We will not have enough time to understand about that single object, because without having much time, we are jumping into another object. When we start to analyze or understand about the next object, then we are jumping into another. Then it will happen continuously. The vipassana process will be not productive. So in order to achieve that vipassana, that productive vipassana process, we have to spend much time with that object. Otherwise, that understanding is a must. You have to achieve that one. Even though you have that complete understanding about the realities before you start the meditation, vipassana meditations, if your mind is not in a disciplined manner, if your mind is not in a very calm state, your mind is jumping one object to another in a very fast manner. Then even though you have that complete understanding, complete knowledge about the realities, vipassana, about the vipassana sphere, still you don't have that capacity, ability to apply that knowledge into the real situation practically during the vipassana process. Then ultimately your vipassana process or the insight meditation will not be productive, will not be effective, because what is meant by this productivity, you have to, at the end of the day, you will have to achieve the insight knowledges. Without achieving the insight knowledges, the vipassana knowledge is not productive. You are just trying to do the vipassana, but it is not productive because they are not producing the results of the actual vipassana. So having the knowledge is a different thing. Having a very suitable mind or a disciplined mind is a different thing. And these are two different requisites. You have to develop yourself before you start the vipassana meditation. The knowledge, we are not talking about that vipassana sphere now, we can talk in future, but the second requisite, the second thing you have to achieve before you start the meditation is that calmness, that discipline within your mind, in order to spend much time with the object, in order to analyze the object properly, in order to get the full picture of the object based on the knowledge what you have taken, what you have accumulated before the insight meditation. So in order to do that, you have to spend much time, because you have to analyze that object in a different angles. Okay, so that in order to achieve that requisite, to have a calm mind, to have a well-disciplined mind, to deal with the objects, then your mind should have at least some level of concentration. That is the requisite what we have to achieve. Otherwise, your mind, if your mind is not calm, if your mind is not in a well-disciplined manner, if your mind cannot spend much time with a specific object for a period of time, then you are like putting much effort to do the vipassana, and you are like spending much time to do the vipassana, but it will be a very tiring process, because at the end of the day you are very tired about doing vipassana, and at the end of the day you are not gaining. You will not have anything to say that this kind of thing I have gained through the vipassana meditation. Then sometimes you will be not happy with the vipassana. Sometimes you may have to, the mind tends to stop the vipassana. That is not a good thing. So better to have these two requisites. The first requisite is to have the correct or the full understanding about the realities, that is about the vipassana sphere, vipassana bhumi, and to have a suitable mind, the proper mind to do the vipassana with calmness and a well-disciplined manner. What should be there within your mind. So we are talking about the second requisites. We should have at least some level of concentration. It can be someone can achieve the jhana level, okay, the absorption levels by doing the vipassana, by developing the tranquility to a greater level. So they can achieve the absorptions, we call the jhanas, and then he can move into the vipassana. That's also a good option. The best option is that. But sometimes someone cannot achieve the absorption levels, then he can achieve the access concentration levels. We call the access concentration the upachara samadhi. Sometimes he can only achieve this access concentration. Then he tries to do the vipassana. And sometimes mutually they are doing the vipassana and samatha also. Sometimes they some practitioners, they cannot achieve even this access concentration. They try to achieve some level of vipassana, some level of concentration, that calmness of the mind. Then they try to move to do the vipassana. These all three options are possible. Then they try to do the tranquility. They try to develop the tranquility and the insight with meditation also, both together. So it can be also possible. So anyway, now we are talking about this developing concentration. That is why that is the importance of the concentration. Because without having the concentration, your vipassana will be tiring process, and you have to put much effort. You have to spend much time. Sometimes you will not get the results of the vipassana meditation. Then you will not be having the insight knowledges. At the end of the day, you will not achieve the noble path. Then you will not achieve the liberation. So that is the thing, the story behind that, because we start today's Dhamma talk, today's topics. So in order to achieve the concentration, let's consider ourselves. Okay, what is the situation? What is the condition of our mind? We know we don't have that concentration levels. We don't have that suitable mind to do the vipassana in a very efficient way. Okay, we can do the vipassana, but our mind is not in a very suitable way to do it very efficiently. So we have to do the we have to develop the concentration. Okay, now we are going to achieve some level of concentration, some level of tranquility within our mind. But when someone is going to a very calm and quiet place, he tries to develop the concentration, do the samatha meditation. Is it possible if he is doing all the things in his day-to-day life, whether it is good, whether it is bad? Sometimes he is doing bad things by his body, sometimes he is doing bad things by his word, and sometimes he is thinking about the bad thoughts. He is doing the good things as well as the bad things every day. So then he tries to go to a very calm and quiet place and tries to develop the concentration. It is not that much feasible because his mind, his bodily actions and his verbal actions and his mental actions are not in a very disciplined manner. So if though he goes to a calm and quiet place, to a forest or something, and to a meditation center, and he tries to do the meditation, but the concentration, developing the concentration, this tranquility process is also will not be a very easy one, very efficient one, because his mental activities, verbal activities, bodily activities are not in a very disciplined manner. So before we develop the vipassana, we understood that we have to develop the concentration. But before we do the concentration, before we start to develop the concentration, still we have to do some basic steps. We have to achieve some basic requisites before, even though we try to do the concentration part. So we are trying to discuss about these basic levels to how to become an eligible person to develop the concentration, because vipassana is after that. Before we do the vipassana, we should have at least some level of concentration. But we know that before we do the concentration even, we should have some prerequisites before we start the concentration part. So we are going to talk about these things today. So I'm using a small PDF with some facts, because it would be very easy to understand you about these facts when I'm talking, because sometimes you can put some notes by yourself based on this document. So I'm giving topic prerequisite to develop concentration. That means what are the things we have to do. Now we are going to do the concentration part. We are trying to develop the concentration. But still we have some prerequisites before we develop the concentration. So we are going to talk about the Akusala, Kusala and Puñña. That is a topic we are going to discuss today. So the flow of the talk I have mentioned. So we are going one by one. Okay, we are going to the first topic, 3 types of actions of a being. 3 types of action of a being. While we are doing the actions, we know day-to-day life, we are doing so many actions. Some actions we are doing by using our body. We call them the bodily actions. In Pali, the kaya kamma. And sometimes we are doing some actions by using our word or the speech. We call them the vachi kamma. And sometimes without the help of the body or the word or the speech, we are just doing some activities, actions by using the mind. We are having some thoughts. We are thinking about in a good way or the bad way. Sometimes we are thinking about some the things in a very like about the attachments, about the lust. Sometimes we are getting angry with something or someone, and sometimes we are like enjoying something, any food or something by mentally, and we are blaming someone mentally. We are trying to we are dreaming about something to achieve. So these kind of things we are doing mentally. we call the mano kamma. These three actions we are doing day-to-day life. This is we call the kammic actions. So, kamma doors, because sometimes we use our body, we call the kaya kamma dvāra, the door of bodily actions. And sometimes we use our word to do the actions. We call the vachi kamma dvāra, the door of verbal actions or the vocal actions. And we are just doing activities without the help of the body or the word by just using the mind. We call that door is, we are calling that door the mano kamma dvāra. We call the door of mental activities. These are the three kamma doors or the dvāra. We call in Pali dvāra. These are the doors which help us to perform these bodily actions, verbal actions or the mental actions. The next one is, now we have got the understanding about these things. I have get the quotation of the Abhidhammata Sangha, the Pali book. We have the Abhidhamma book. We have in order to learn these all the Abhidhamma facts in a very like managed way. So I have get the quotation from that book. Tata akusalang kāmāvacara kusalang rūpāvacara kusalang arūpāvacara kusalang cheti pākaṭṭāna vasena. I'm not going to go into a deep level of the Pali, because I'm going about the meaning of that one. So we have some different classification about these kammas. The first we have talk about the kammas in these doors, based on the doors, what we are doing that kamma, by the help of which door, body, word or the mind. So there are some few classification about this kamma, and I'm going to talk about one classification, that is by the place of ripening. We call the how the kammas going to give you the vipaka. Based on that fact, the kamma is fourfold. What is that? The first one is akusala kamma. We call the unwholesome activities, unwholesome deeds or the actions. And the second one is the kāmāvacara kusala kamma. What do you call the sense sphere? What do you call the sense sphere wholesome kammas or the activities? And the third one is the rūpāvacara kusala kamma. We call the kammas, the fine material sphere kammas. And the fourth one, the last one is the rūpāvacara kusala kamma. These are also wholesome kammas. We call the immaterial sphere kammas. They are also, the last three are wholesome actions. The first one is the unwholesome action, by the place of ripening. How they are going to do where they are going to give the vipakas, results, based on that fact, the kamma is fourfold. So we are going to talk about these things. The first one is unwholesome kamma. So unwholesome, in the beginning we have learned that kamma is threefold based on the door, what we use to perform that particular action or the activity. What are those? The bodily door, and the verbal door, and the mental door. The akusala is also, the akusala is the unwholesome action, bad deeds, wrong ones. So by doing these akusala kammas, they are giving the bad results in future. So those akusala kammas also can be classified under those three doors. Bodily door, sometimes we say bodily unwholesome action, kaya akusala kaya kamma. And the second one is the unwholesome verbal activities, akusala vachi kamma. And the third one is akusala mano kamma, unwholesome mental activities. So we can classify all the akusalas, unwholesome activities, into based on the doors what we use to perform that particular activity. And these, because now we have classified the whole akusala kammas into three categories by using the doors: bodily door, verbal door, and the mental door. The first, we are going to talk about the bodily unwholesome actions. Bodily unwholesome actions. They are the Akusala Kaya Kamma. So it is based on the Abhidhammatta Sangha Pali quotation. The explanation or the meaning is given. So there are three unwholesome actions. There are three bodily unwholesome actions. We call the Akusala Kaya Kamma, generally occurring. You have to focus, you have to pay your attention in these terms we are discussing in the next level. Through the door of the body, known as the bodily intimation, the Kaya Viññatti. Okay, so there are three main unwholesome activities you are doing by using your bodily door, the Kaya Kamma dvāra. What are those? The first one is the killing. When someone is killing someone, or animal or a human being or someone who has that life, then it's a killing. Stealing. Stealing is you are taking something what is not given to you, which belongs to someone else. You are stealing. You are taking without any permissions to get that possession. So what is not given, you are taking without get the proper permission. That is stealing. Sexual misconduct. That is, you are doing the sexual behavior, you are using your sexual behavior in a very wrong manner. So we are not going to discuss about these things in deep manner. We know these kind of things. If a husband goes to another woman other than his wife, it's a sexual misconduct. If a wife goes to another man except his husband, like exceeding his husband, it's a sexual misconduct. So these kind of things belongs to the sexual misconduct. So we are just briefing about these things, so we can learn, we can understand. There are killing, we call panatipata, stealing, adattādāna, and the sexual misconduct, kāmesu miccāchāra. These are the three full course of actions which can happen in the bodily door. We call the Kaya Kamma dvāra. So these are the three things. Then we are going to explain about the second part. Sometimes we are doing some bad deeds, some akusala kammas, unwholesome things by using our speech, by using our word. What are those? They are verbal. There are 4 verbal actions, verbal unwholesome actions, which are generally occurring in the door of speech. We call the vaci kamma dvāra, which is known as the vocal intimation, the vaci viññatti. What are they? There are 4-fold akusala kammas, unwholesome actions. The first one is the false speech or lying. You are telling lies to someone else to cheat someone or get something done. Whatever the purpose, when you are telling the false thing to someone else to misguide him, that is a lying. That is a musāvāda, the first one. What you use your verbal door to do that unwholesome activity. And the slandering. Slandering is the pisunāvāca. You are telling these things in order to make some conflicts between some 2 persons. Or you have that intention to get that familiarity with someone. So he is telling to that second person about a third person. Sometimes he has that intention to make some confliction between the first one and the third person, or sometimes he is telling something about the third person, something bad thing about the third person to that first person in order to get the familiarity to be a friend with the first person. That is the slandering, pisunāvāca. And the harsh speech, when someone is hurting someone by using the speech, by the rude words, okay, sometimes to make someone angry, to make someone sad, So he is using the harsh words, we call the parusa vacha. The third one, harsh speech. He doing this harsh speech by using the verbal do. The fourth one is the frivolous talk. The frivolous talk means some vain talks. That is, it doesn't contain any meaning, because it will not be a meaningful thing for the person who is telling, and it will not be a very effective or very productive conversation to the listener. So these kind of things we call the frivolous talk, or we call the vain talks. It doesn't make any productivity thing. It doesn't create any kind of a productivity to the talk, to the speaker or the listener. We call them the sampappalapa, the vain talks. These are, we call, the fourfold activities you are doing by using your verbal do. We call the akusala vachi kamma, unwholesome verbal actions. So now all together we have learned about the three bodily actions, unwholesome bodily actions, the killing, stealing, and the sexual misconduct, and we have learned about the four types of bad verbal activities: the false speech, slandering, and the harsh speech, and the frivolous talk, the vain talk. So these are the sevenfold unwholesome activities you are doing using your body and the word. Now we are going to explain furthermore about these terms. We have met a term called the previous one. We have met the term bodily intimation, kaya viññatti. That is mentioned as the door of the body. When we try to understand what is the actual door of this bodily action, let's take what should be the most suitable thing to be called as the bodily door. That means the door is a thing that allow us to enter to some place. The house or the home has that door. It allows the person to enter to the house. So likewise, the door is the thing which allows that person to perform that particular activity. So what is actually this door? We have that our body. We can see anyone's body with some limbs, with the head, with these other parts. We call that body. Is that body the actual door which allows us to do these bodily actions? No, because even when we consider about the dead person, still he has all these parts in his body, all the limbs, all the parts, all the bodily parts, head, everything is there, but he cannot. But the dead person, dead body cannot perform any bodily action. So we cannot say that the body itself is the kamma door, the bodily kamma door. It is not the kaya kamma dvāra. We cannot say. Let's think about our mind. Is the mind the bodily door, the actual bodily door? Can we call the mind itself alone as the bodily door? No, we cannot say, because mind cannot do anything bodily without having a body. Because mind itself, mind alone cannot perform any activity. The mind can have some volitions, some intentions, some thoughts to do something, but still mind itself alone cannot perform that action that contain that volition, that intention to do something. But the mind itself cannot perform that activity without having the help of the body. So we cannot say that mind itself as the kaya kamma dvāra. We cannot say the mind it is the door of bodily actions. So it's we cannot call the mind as the kaya kamma dvāra, and we cannot say the body itself alone as the Kaya Kamma dvāra. So what is the actual Kaya Kamma dvāra? So Kaya Kamma, because we cannot say that both of them, when we combine these together, we cannot say it's the Kaya Kamma dvāra, because we cannot make them combine. No, it is a nama. The consciousness is a nama. It will never combine with the rupa. The body is altogether the rupa, the corporeality, or the material things, material phenomenon we have. So these together we cannot combine and call that is the Vachi Kamma dvāra. It is wrong. So the mind itself we cannot call it is the bodily door. Without the body itself alone we cannot say it is the bodily door. By combining these together we cannot say it is a bodily door. So what is actually the bodily door? What is the actually Kaya Kamma dvāra? That is explaining here. When we have a volition in our mind, when we have a chetana, when we have that intention or a thought to do something, that is we call the chetana. It's a mental factor which arises within the consciousness at the same time where the consciousness arises. So, but still, even though the mind has that volition or the intention to do that action, the mind cannot do anything. The thing what mind does is, the mind produces some material phenomenon. We call the mind produced material phenomenon within our body. When we have a volition, thought or intention to do something, let's take I want to stand up now. Now I'm sitting, I have a volition to stand up. So at the same time that consciousness produce some material things, we call the mind produced material things within my body. Then these material phenomenon, that it is the one who leads my body, make me stand up. So it is actually the material phenomenon. It belongs to the material sphere, but it is made by the mind. So we call that mind produced material phenomenon, we call that a particular name the bodily intimation. Bodily intimation in Pali we call the Kaya Viññatti. It is a material thing and it is made by the mind. That is the real Kaya Kamma dvāra. We call that thing, the Kaya Viññatti or the bodily intimation, is the real Kaya Kamma dvāra. Not the mind, not the body itself, but the mind produced material phenomenon. We call the Kaya Viññatti or the bodily intimation is the real Kaya Kamma dvāra. Because without producing that Kaya Viññatti or the bodily intimation, we cannot perform. Even though we have a body, even though we have that mind with the volition, still the bodily action will not be performed. Then we should have the most necessary thing is the bodily intimation. So that is what it is mentioned, the door of the body known as the bodily intimation. So the door of the body, the Kaya Kamma dvāra, is known as the bodily intimation, Kaya Viññatti. So that is the thing. We have to call that bodily intimation which is produced by the mind as per the volition it has. So that volition, that bodily intimation is the real cause to perform this action. If I want to stand up now, my mind made that volition, make that intention or the thought, and that thought volition makes some bodily intimation within myself. That bodily intimation make me stand up. That is the thing. What is happening when we doing some bodily action, bodily activity? Okay, that is Kaya Kamma dvāra. It is clear. It is not mind, it is not body, but the bodily intimation. So what is the Vachi Kamma dvāra? Here it is mentioned the door of speech known as the vocal intimation, Vachi Viññatti. how we can explain this thing? The bodily action now we have understood because the bodily intimation is the bodily door of bodily actions. So when we have a volition, when we have that thought to speak something, to make a sound which has some like a meaning, when we have to have a conversation, when we have to like convey something by our words, by our speech, then first I have a volition in my mind, but still the mind cannot produce any sound by himself, by itself. By itself alone, it cannot produce any kind of a sound. I have all the lips, teeth, tongue, my vocal cords, and everything, all the bodily parts which helps to produce that sound I have. But alone, because they themselves alone cannot produce any sound. Because as the previous simile, when we compare about the dead body, it also has all the bodily parts which I have now. All the vocal cords, tongue, teeth, lips, all these things that dead body has. But it cannot produce any sound. It cannot produce any sound. So these bodily parts, even though they are helping to produce these kind of voices, sounds, some meaningful words, but still we cannot say these bodily parts are the vachi kamma dvāra. They are not the real verbal kamma door. And the mind itself we cannot say, because mind itself alone cannot produce any kind of a sound. As the bodily action, when we have a volition, when we have a thought to produce something meaningful, any kind of a sound, whether it has a meaning or not, when we have that intention to produce some kind of a sound, then that volition, that consciousness which has that volition to produce some kind of a sound, then it produces some mind-made, mind-produced material phenomenon around these bodily part, vocal parts. Then these vocal parts works together. They work together to produce that particular voice or the sound as I intended, as I thought, as per the volition. These bodily parts work together and produce that sound. So the mind itself we cannot say that is the vachi kamma dvāra. It is not the vocal door or the verbal door. And these bodily parts which help to produce these sounds, they themselves alone cannot say, cannot call as the verbal door. So, but we call the verbal or the vocal intimation, we call the vachi viññatti. It is the real vachi kamma dvāra, the door of verbal action, door of speech. So we know what is the actual kaya kamma dvāra, which helps to perform the bodily actions, that is bodily intimation, the kaya viññatti. And now we know what is the actual door of speech, which helps to perform the verbal actions or some word speech, that is the mind-produced material phenomenon we call the verbal or the vocal intimation, that is vachi viññatti. These are the things we have to understand about when we think about these kaya kamma dvāra and vachi kamma dvāra. Okay, now we have to learn why there is a phrase called the generally occurring bahulla uttito. Why there is a term like that? Generally occurring means oftenly happens in this vachi kamma dvāra. Let's take the first one, the killing. When someone has the volition to or a thought to kill someone, it can be a mosquito or something, or a bigger animal or some another human. He has that volition. Okay, by himself, by using a weapon, by using by his own body parts, he can do that. He can perform that killing. Okay, let's take a mosquito. Okay, he can use his own hand and kill that mosquito. So it is done by using the bodily intimation. we call the Kaya Kamma dvāra, the body of the door of the body. Okay, that's clear. But sometimes a person can command someone. He is not performing any single action. He is not like shaking his single finger. He is not shaking his own head. Without performing any bodily action, he can just say a word to kill that someone or animal. So he is just giving command by the speech, by the word. What is happening there? Is he using the bodily intimation? No, he is not using the kaya viññatti, because any bodily action is not performed by himself. He just given the command by using his words. So he has used that command to perform that killing, that unwholesome action of killing, but he has not used the bodily intimation. So it is still, we use, that is generally occurring part is there. In that case, by giving his command, he performed the killing. When that person who has got the command, he went to that particular place and killed that person as the commander said, as he got the command, then the commander will have that offense, the killing, that has performed that killing unwholesome action, even though he has not performed any bodily action. But he used the vaci viññatti, or the verbal intimation, that vaci kamma dvāra, in order to perform that killing. But still, we are not saying that killing is a vaci kamma. Even though he used the words to perform that killing, unwholesome action, but we don't say that killing is vaci kamma in that particular scenario, in that particular example. Still, it's a kaya kamma, unwholesome bodily action, because that's why we say sometimes in special cases these killing, stealing, these kind of things can happen by using the vaci kamma dvāra, by using the vocal intimation, but still the unwholesome action belongs to the kaya kamma dvāra. We call them the kaya kamma, akusala kaya kamma, unwholesome bodily actions. That is why the praise is there, generally occurring. Very oftenly it happens in this bodily intimation, by using the bodily intimation. That is what it's there. And the vaci kamma dvāra also, vaci kammas also, that praise is there. Unwholesome action generally occurring through the vocal intimation. Through the vocal intimation. What is generally occurring? Sometimes let's take about the false speech. When someone wants to like tell a lie, he doesn't use the vocal intimation. He doesn't use the words to convey that false thing or the lie, but he write down. When someone has done something false, something bad, the other person comes to him and asks, have you done this particular thing? But he doesn't say anything who has done that bad thing. He just shake his head to convey that he has not that thing, but he has given the false information. He has lied. He has done the false speech, wholesome action, but by using the bodily intimation. He has not given a single word. The words are produced by the vaci kamma dvāra, which is called the vocal intimation, vaci viññatti. But at that particular example, specific case, he didn't use the vocal intimation to produce some sounds, produce some words to convey that in false speech. Instead of that, he used the bodily action. He just shake the mind, he just shake the head, or he just show them some fingers that he has not done that particular activity. But still, we don't say that false speech in that particular case, it's a kaya kamma. Still, it belongs to the vaci kamma, even though it is done by using the bodily intimation, even though it is done by the kaya kamma dvāra in that specific case, still we say the false speech is vachi kamma dvāra. That is why we say the generally occurring these false speech, slandering, harsh speech, and these vain talks, they are always vachi kamma, even though you use the bodily intimation or the kaya kamma dvāra, or even though you use the bodily intimation, the vachi kamma dvāra. Those are the important points you have to learn when you understand about this vachi kamma and vachi akusala kamma and akusala kaya kamma. Then there are three mental unwholesome activities which we are doing by using only the mind without the help of the bodily intimation, which is called the kaya kamma dvāra, the door of body, or without the help of the vachi kamma dvāra, we call the door of speech or the vocal intimation. Without using these vocal intimation and the bodily intimation, by using only the mind, we are doing some unwholesome activities. We call them the covetousness, the abhijja. That is the very very strong wish or the strong attachment towards the others' possessions, others' properties. Sometimes we have some our own properties. Okay, you may have your own house, you may have your own car, you may have the husband or wives, kids, and your parents, and some clothes, some jewelries, these kind of things. Towards these kind of things, sometimes the person, the owner has some kind of attachment. It's natural, but it is not a good thing. Still, it's a unwholesome thought. If you have that kind of attachment towards your own things, it's a unwholesome consciousness. But still, it's natural. It happens for everyone. But what happens? Sometimes a person can have that kind of attachment. He is wishing, he is trying to achieve the others' properties. That is called abhijja. It's a very abnormal attachment towards the others' possessions. Whether it's a living being or a non-living thing, he is having that wish that may that thing will be mine. May that person lose that thing, and may I have that possession of that particular thing. That is, we call the abhijja, the covetousness, that a strong level of, that's abnormal level of the attachment or the lobha. The second thing is ill will. That is, sometimes we get angry for some reasons. Sometimes a person can have a very strong ill will or a hatred mind, and he is wishing, may that the other person will die. May that the other person will have some bad situations. May he get the bad sicknesses or something. May he die. These kind of things arise in his mind because it's abnormal angry, abnormal hatred mind. We call that ill will or the hatred mind. We call the vyāpāda. That is a mental, because you are not get the help of the bodily intimation or the vocal intimation in order to have that kind of a covetousness or abhijja or the ill will or the vyāpāda. It just arises in your mind, just in your mind. You are not get the help of the kaya kamma dvāra or vachi kamma dvāra. This is happen in the mano kamma dvāra, the door of mind, and the wrong view. These are the wrong views means sometimes you think the actual things or the right things as wrong things. Sometimes you believe the wrong things as right things, and you act, you perform based on those thoughts. So that is also we call unwholesome mental activity. Sometimes this is the wrong view, the miccha ditti. Sometimes we have some tiny wrong views. They are not that much strong. But when someone goes to these kind of there are three main miccha dittis we call the ahetuka ditti. Kiriya Ditti and Nattika Ditti. We can learn them in future. These kind of very powerful wrong views we are trying to contain in this wrong view section. So this covetousness, ill will or the hatred mind, and the wrong view, these are mind activities without help of the bodily intimation or the vocal intimation. They are just arising within the mind itself. So we call them that is why we have mentioned in the mind without bodily intimation or the vocal intimation, these mental unwholesome actions generally occurring only in the mind. Generally occurring in the mind. Sometimes they can be arisen in the bodily and the verbal, as the bodily actions and the verbal actions. So these are the 10 unwholesome causes. We call them the full course of actions. Full course of actions. Now you can remember the classification. We are going to talk about the what you call the kammas or the actions based on the place of ripening, based on the place where these kammas are going to make their vipakas or the results, in which place. So by that based on that fact, we have classified these akusala kammas and the kamavachara kusala kammas and the rupavachara kusala kammas and arupavachara kusala kammas. The first one is the akusala kamma. So these akusala kammas, we have learned altogether 10 akusala kammas. 3 akusala kammas we are doing very oftenly by using our bodily intimation, which is called as the kaya kamma dvāra, the door of body. And 4 of them, out of 10, 4 of them, we perform these unwholesome actions very oftenly by using our vocal intimation. We call the vachi kamma dvāra, the door of speech. Out of 10, the last 3 unwholesome activities we perform without the help of vocal intimation and without the help of the bodily intimation. We are just using our mind to perform these kind of the last 3 unwholesome activities. So the next thing is the classification is by the place of ripening. Though this is the first part of that fourfold classification, the akusala kamma. These 10 akusala kammas we call the full course of actions. Full course of actions. Because we can see these akusala kammas, when let's say the steal in the first one, adatta dana, when someone has that bad thought in his mind, that volition in his mind to steal something which is not given, which belongs to someone else. He has that volition to steal that thing. Okay, that still he has just the volition, he has just a consciousness with that bad thought. Still it's a bad or unwholesome consciousness. It's a kamma. It's a kamma. The first thing I have to mention about this thing, the first thing is we are doing these kammas, okay, by using our bodily intimation, by using our vocal intimation, or without the help of them, and just by using our mind. Even though you are doing whatever the intimation, whatever the body, whatever the door, these kammas are twofold for us. That is the unwholesome activities and the wholesome activities. For a putujjana, we all are putujjanas, no? We can have only the wholesome actions and the unwholesome actions. There is no intermediate thing. We are performing some activities by using our body, word, or by using our mind. They are still we can classify only into 2 main classifications, the unwholesome activities and the wholesome activities. If you perform something by using your body, by using your word, or by using your mind, these all kammas or the activities should belong to one of these. If you have not performed any unwholesome action, then definitely it would be unwholesome activity. That should be understood. It's a very important fact. We have to understand there is only two fold of activities we have: unwholesome activities and the wholesome activities. If we are not engaged with unwholesome activities, definitely you are engaging at that particular situation with unwholesome. That is the main thing, because all these activities are happen in the javana state, in our sequence of the mind, sequence of the consciousnesses. So in this javana state, all these actions happen by the body, by the word, by the mind. Okay, all the javanas for a putujjana, either kusala, wholesome, or either akusala, unwholesome. There's no any intermediate part which not belongs to kusala or akusala. If you are not with the kusala, wholesome, then definitely you are with the unwholesome. That is why Buddha admonishing, be with the kusala like object every time. Be with the sati. Okay, be with that mindfulness. Otherwise, you are always be with the unwholesome thoughts, bad thoughts. That's why we have to always try to be with a like wholesome mind object, wholesome object or the meditation object. Always try to develop the mindfulness within your mind. Otherwise, your mind is an unwholesome thing. You are within the unwholesome sphere. Okay, that's an additional thing and the very important thing we have to understand. Okay, these whatever the akusala kammas, first we said, if we have that volition to steal something, that itself is a unwholesome kamma. But still, it is not a it is not a full course of action. It is not a kamma patha. What is kamma patha? Kamma patha is an action, it's a kamma which has the capacity to give a rebirth, which has that ability, which has that capacity. We call the kamma patha full course of action. That volition, you have that volition or the thought to steal something. Still, you have not performed yet, or you have performed but you couldn't steal that one. It was unsuccessful. You couldn't steal that thing. Even you have tried by your body or word, you couldn't steal. Still, you have not that kamma patha. The stealing kamma patha, stealing or the adattādāna kamma patha. Okay, the akusala kamma patha is not performed. So, even though it's akusala kamma, that all the bodily actions, all the verbal actions you have performed to steal that the particular thing cannot perform, cannot give a rebirth in the miserable places. So stealing is a bad kamma. When it has that capacity, let's say a person has that volition to steal something and he has performed some bodily activities, verbal activities to steal that, and he was successful. He has stolen that particular object, then he has performed that stealing and he has accumulated the full course of action we call the akusala kamma patha, and it has that particular stealing kamma or the unwholesome activity, full course of action, has the ability, has the capacity to give a rebirth in the miserable places. We call the chatuapaya, the fourfold miserable places, the niraya. We call the realm of intense, continuous suffering, and the tiracchānapāya, we call the realm of the animals, and the peta, the realm from ever hunger beings, peta, and the asura, the realm of the miserable petas. So these four apayas, these akusala kamma has come to that stage of akusala kamma patha, the full course of action. They have that capacity to take you to the one of these miserable places. That is the very dangerous thing. That is why we have to learn. Let's take about the nibbana, about the noble paths, about these vipassana knowledges, about the concentration, about the tranquility. All these things are coming in future. But what is the most important and most dangerous thing? What is the most dangerous thing we have? We are like willing to face that death. We all have to face that death. At the time of death, if this kind of a full course of action, akusala kamma, arises, and it has that capacity to take you to the one of these miserable places. That is the danger we have if we are not developing the kusala within ourselves. That is the most dangerous thing. We have to understand this reality. We have to understand this thing, because just forgetting these things and just not contemplating about these things will not do anything. Because if you have accumulated these kind of full course of action, unwholesome full course of actions, akusala kamma patha, by using your body, word or the mind, then they can, when you are dying, when you are facing the death, at the time of death, one of these akusala kammas will arise, and it gets all the functions of your at the time of death, and they will take one of these kammas will take you to one of the miserable places. Then the story is done. Then what about the tranquility? What about the vipassana? What about the noble paths and the nibbana? When you have a birth in one of these miserable realms, miserable places, these four apayas, what about the tranquility? They are not valid in those places. You cannot do the tranquility. You cannot perform the vipassana. You cannot achieve the Four Noble Paths. You cannot achieve the liberation. The most dangerous thing is, if you are accumulating these things, before you start the concentration, you have to get rid of these accumulation. You have to stop. You have to abstain from these akusala kammas. You have to stop doing these full course of unwholesome activities by your body, word or mind. That is the most important thing, because it is the most dangerous thing you can experience at the time of your death. You have got this human life because of not these things. You have got this human life because of the kusala kammas, wholesome things. These unwholesome things will take you to the miserable places. If one of these arises at the time of death, there is no chance. There is no chance. You have to go to that miserable place. Then the practice is not there. The practice or the liberation is not there. You have to feel that all the sufferings in that particular realm. So that's why before you start the concentration, before you start the vipassana, you have to learn about these unwholesome deeds. Because if you don't understand the danger of these akusala kamma pathas, then you are ignoring this danger thing. Because you are like ignoring about the danger of this akusala kamma patha. You are just try to forget. You are just not thinking about these things. It will not do anything. So that is why I wanted to emphasize about this akusala kamma patha. Before you go for the concentration or the vipassana, you have to stop these things. You have to come to a stage you have given up these things. You have abstained from these things. You have restrained all the akusala kammas by your body, and you have to purify your body. You have to maintain your bodily actions by not doing these things. You have to maintain your verbal action by not doing these things. You have to maintain your mind in a very pure manner by not doing these mental unwholesome things. So these are 10 unwholesome actions. So there are some descriptions, but I am not going to discuss based on the time I have got. So I am going to do the explanation about the wholesome actions. Next topic is the kusala. The dasa kusala and dasa akusala, the 10-fold wholesome and 10-fold unwholesome are the moral foundation. This akusala corrupts your mind, and with the body or the mind, word or the mind. And dasa kusala purifies mind. They are the wholesome. This kusala and purifies, and they lead to permanent happiness, nibbana. At the end, and before you achieve the nibbana, they make the desirable, very pleasurable results in in this world and the next lives until you achieve the Nibbana. But you can perform this kusala by using your body, by using your word, and by using your mind. I have mentioned the quotation from the Anguttara Nikaya about this kusala and akusala. Kusalancha vikkave desessami. Then the Buddha is mentioning about the tenfold kusala. I am giving the meaning. Dasa akusala, we have learned about these things, the killing, taking what is not given. These 10 unwholesome deeds, it is mentioned in this sutta, particular sutta, and I have mentioned those all together, all the 10 unwholesome activities which can be performed by either body, word, or the mind. But now I'm going to talk about the Dasa Kusala, 10 wholesome deeds. What are the wholesome activities what we can perform? This is the abstaining part, restraining part. The first unwholesome is the panatipata, killing. The first kusala is abstaining from killing, panatipata veramani. The second one is adinnādāna veramani, the abstaining from the stealing and the kāmesu micchāchāra and so on. These all the dasa kusala based on the abstaining part. You have that akusala part first, tenfold akusalas, unwholesome. Tenfold kusala is based on the abstaining process. Now you are trying to abstain from all these 10 akusalas what we have discussed earlier. This is the dasa kusala. But you have to understand this abstaining is just not a single the simple thing, because it is also a full course of action. Abstaining from killing, you don't have to perform anything. Like you don't have to perform anything by your body, but you have that abstaining within your body. But you are not doing to abstain from killing. You have to first you have to observe that kind of a precept. Okay, you get that, you observe that precept, and you try to maintain that precept. You try to protect that. That is the abstaining part. When there is a situation arises that to kill someone, to kill an animal, to kill a mosquito, ant, or a fly, then you contemplate about that precept what you have observed. We call the first one is the virati. That means the samadhana virati, the abstaining when you are observing. When the time of the situation arises, when there is a situation to kill any animal or a human or any kind of a living being, then you contemplate about your morality or the precept, what you have observed, then you stop killing. You abstain from the killing. You are not going to kill that particular animal, but you have that particular volition to kill someone. When you see a mosquito is biting you and take some blood from your body, you have that volition in your mind. Oh, I have to kill that mosquito, I am going to kill that one. But you are not going to perform that action by your body. That is the kusala, even though that volition is akusala, kamma, but it is not the full course of action, because you have not performed that action. By contemplating about your precept or the morality, you have not performed that killing unwholesome action. So this is the abstaining part. It's a kusala and the kusala kamma pata. What is that kusala kamma pata? When they arise at the time of your death, they are not taking you to the miserable places. They are taking you to the desirable, pleasurable places, divine worlds or the human world. Okay, that is the importance of the abstaining. You should not think about it is just abstaining and not doing anything, but you are not performing any action. How it can be that much important? It's important because the Buddha has admonished to do, to abstain from these unwholesome activities, and it's a Kusala Kammapatha, and it is like described under the Sila, under the morality or the virtue. It is a full course of action, and when it arises at the time of your death, they will take you to the desirable places, to the human world or the divine world. So you have to learn about these things. The first 7, they are just the abstaining part. Abstaining part, first 7. The 8th, the anavijja, the opposite sides of the abhijja. Anavijja means absence of that covetousness, that strong feeling, the strong desire to have the others' properties, to possess the others' possessions. That is the absence of that feeling, absence of that abnormal attachment towards the others' properties. We can develop the we can offer your things. You can do some donations. You can develop that the thought of giving. You can sacrifice your things. That is the anavijja. Abhyapado, absence of that ill will or hatred mind. You can abstain from that part. You can abstain from the ill will or the hatred mind, and at the same time you can develop the loving kindness, metta. That is it has the abstaining part and the doing part. Sammaditthi also, the absence of the wrong view. You have to abstain from the wrong views. You have to learn about the Dhamma in a very clear manner. Then you can understand it's a wrong view, and you can get rid of that. You can give up that view and purify your mind, and you can abstain or restrain from those kind of wrong views. And at the same time, you can learn Dhamma, and you can purify your view. You can have some right views, and you can purify, develop that right view. That's a doing part. The last 3, anavijja, abhyapada and sammaditthi, has the abstaining part as well as the doing part. So you have to learn about those things, and you have to think about the importance and they are strong full course of actions that can take you to the divine world. They can give the pleasurable result, or they can take you to the desirable births. Then they can take you to they can give a rebirth in the desirable places and the pleasurable places. And the next part is, we are going to talk about the Puññakiriyavatthu. This is I have taken from the same Abhidhammata Sangha book, this Pali quotation. Now we were talking about the one classification about the kammas based on the place of ripening. The first one we discussed about the Akusala Kamma. They are the Akusala, they are the kammas, they are the activities which gives the ripening and in the miserable places. The first one. The second one is the wholesome kammas of the sense sphere. We call the Kamavachara Kusala Kamma. Based on this, the Abhidhammata, the quotation, this is also tenfold. The Kamavachara Kusala Kammas. These wholesome activities can give you a rebirth, and they can give the other pleasurable or the desirable results. The main thing is, these are full course of actions. These are Kusala Kamma Pathas. Why we call them as Kusala Kamma Patha? They can give a rebirth when they arise. When they arise at the time of death, when one of these the previous 10 Kusala Kammas or one of these Puññakiriyavatthu's, when they arise at the time of your death, they can take you to a place where the human world or the divine world. They can take you to the desirable places. They can give you a desirable rebirth. That is the main importance of these kind of wholesome activities. So that is why we call them the Kusala Kamma Pathas. And the second part, by the place of ripening. Ripening is happen in the desirable places. Wholesome kammas, So we are giving that classification here also pertaining to the door of the body. These Puññakiriyavatthu and these wholesome actions we can classify by using your body, by the activities which is performed by your body, word and your mind. And these it is mainly we divide into main three categories. They are called the giving, we call dāna, and the virtue or the morality, sīla, and the meditation, bhavana, we call this a tisikha, or a threefold practice. Dāna, we have to do some, you have to develop that giving thought, and the virtue part, you have to develop the morality within yourself, and the meditation, that the giving is a body, that is done by your body, no? You have to give something by you bodily. There should be a physical action. Virtue, you can perform by either the body or the word, because there are something should be protected by your body. Abstaining from killing should be done by your body. Abstaining from the harsh speech or the false speech, it should be done by your word. So the sīla can be done by either the body or the word, and sometimes by using your mind. Meditation is fully done by your mind. You cannot do the meditation by using your body. You cannot do the meditation by using your word. It's happening within the mind. So these are the three main categories of the wholesome things: dāna, sīla and bhavana, giving, virtue and meditation. So now we are going to talk about the Puññakiriyavatthu. So this is the quotation which I have taken from the Abhidhamma Sangha. I am going to talk about these Puññakiriyavatthu. These are the first one is dāna. It's a giving. We all know what is giving. No need to describe further about this dāna. There should be a giving to perform that particular action. You have to think, you have to understand. First we have talked about 10 kind of unwholesome activities. First we have talked about the 10 unwholesome activities. Okay, they are akusalas. Then the second, we were talking about some 10 wholesome activities. They are the abstaining part. That is abstaining part, and this is what we are calling the doing part. You have to do something, not just abstaining. Dāna is not just abstaining. You are abstaining from that like attachment, because you are giving up. You are giving something to the others. So you are abstaining that attachment, but at the same time you have to do something. You have to perform something, your body or the word. Okay, this is actually focus about the giving part or the doing part. Dāna is giving, sīla is the virtue or the morality, and the bhavana, the meditation. Then apachayana, that is a reverence. There are people we have to pay respect. Our parents, our elder brothers or sisters, our other elder relatives, or some monks, or the who are eligible to get that reverence. We have to pay respect for them. We call that apachayana. It is also a doing. We have to do that apachayana by using our body or the word. Veyyavacca. What is veyyavacca? It is the doing the duties or the service. What is veyyavacca? Doing the duties. When you go to a temple, you see that the flower bed where we used to use the offer the flowers, it is not clean, it is dirty. Then you see that, you go and clean that. Then you wash it and make it a nice place, and someone can come and use that flower bed to offer some flowers. That is also veyyavacca. And when you doing some duties for your parents or elder sisters, elder brothers or elder relatives, it's also duties. And you can do something when there is a sick person. You can do something veyyavacca, duties for a sick person. And you can do some duties for the monks also. These are also veyyavacca. For a monk, there are so many duties to perform within his monkhood. But even though you are a layperson, you have certain Vaiyavachas you can accumulate. These are puññas. These are the very strong Kamma pathas which can give you a rebirth, which can give you a rebirth in a desirable place, in a pleasurable places. Then Patidana. Patidana, sixth one is transference of merit. That means when you have accumulated something like merit, when you have done something wholesome, you can tell something. You can tell someone that I have done this kind of a thing. Please accept. Please be happy about that merit. That is the Patidana. It is not just the same thing. Okay, this is Patidana. We are not like paying much attention to these Apachayana, Vaiyavachana, Patidana, Pattanumodana. But still, like Dana, Sila, Bhavana, these are all one of the 10 Puññakiriyavatthu. They are Kamma pathas, and they have that capacity or the ability to give a rebirth. If you are developing, if you are accumulating these kind of things, doing reverence, paying respect, and doing duties, and a transference of merits to the others, living ones, and with the dead ones, and with the Deva beings and the Brahma beings, it's also a very strong or a very great wholesome we can do very easily. Very easily. You can do something wholesome, and you can do some dana, you can do some sila, you can do some bhavana, but without spending anything, without occurring any expense, you can do patidana. You can do Vaiyavachana. To paying respect, you don't have to spend anything. To do some duties, you don't have to spend anything. To transfer the merits what you have done, you don't have to pay anything. And the rejoice in the others' unwholesome things, you don't have to pay. You don't have to spend anything. So these are the Puññakiriyavatthu you can do very easily without spending anything, without spending any money. Okay, but you should have that strong wholesome mind within you to do these things in the right manner. The Patidana is the transference. You are giving the others, you are telling the others about the merit what you have accumulated. That is called Patidana. And Pattanumodana, when someone tells you that, okay, please rejoice about our merit, we have given this kind of a offering or a dana, then you can rejoice about that merit frankly. Okay, frankly you can rejoice without getting angry or any bad feeling. You can do that rejoicing part. It's still a very strong Puññakiriyavatthu which can become a full course of action, and at the end of the day, at the time of your death, if that Pattanumodana arises, it can give you a pleasurable result and give a pleasurable, desirable rebirth. And Dhammasavana, what you are doing now is Dhammasavana. Listening to the Dhamma, we know about that. And Dhamma Desana, what I'm doing now, this Dhamma Desana, it's also a very strong, wholesome activities, a doing part, we can accumulate a very strong puññas. Adittiju Kamma means we have, sometimes we have some wrong views. Sometimes we don't know clearly about some particular activities. So we can learn Dhamma, we can listen to the Dhamma, we can read Dhamma books, we can get the advices from an eligible person or a knowledgeable person to straightening out your wrong views, or straightening out your views. You have to give up the bad views or the wrong views. You have to accept or develop the right views within yourselves, and you have to, by learning Dhamma, you can make their more straightened. These are the 10 kind of tenfold Puññakiriyavatthu. So these are very strong, wholesome activities. This is actually the doing part. Earlier we were talking about the abstaining part. This is the performing, the doing part. But anyway, these all 20, the previous 10 and this 10 Puññakiriyavatthu's, all together 20 wholesome activities, but they are performed by the 8 wholesome Kusala Chittas. We call the Mahavipaka. So there are two terms, the Kusala and Puñña. Earlier we were using that Dasa Kusala Kammapatha, and now we were using Dasa Puññakiriyavatthu. But still they are performed when you are doing these any kind of these wholesome activities. One of the 8 wholesome chittas, we call the Mahavipakas, arise. But based on the activity, but based on the performance, but based on the process, what is done during that chitta, sometimes during the abstaining part, the virati is the most strong one. That is Samma Vacha, Samma Kammata, Samma Ajiva. Those viratis are the main mental factors in that consciousness, because that is abstaining. You are not doing, you are refraining from something. Here the Chetana is more important because you are performing something by your bodily intimation or verbal intimation or by using your mind. Okay? But anyway, you have to use one of the 8 Kusala Chittas, one of the 8 wholesome consciousnesses we call the Mahakusala. I think the previous time I said Mahavipaka, it's wrong. It was a mistake. This is called the Mahakusala Chitta. So one of these 8 consciousnesses, wholesome consciousnesses, we have to use. But why the Puñña part, Puñña term and the Kusala term is used? Why? What's the reason for that one? Because based on the activity that consciousness perform. Sometimes let's take the candle. When you go to a very dark room, it is covered with the dark, no any single source of light. Then you light up a candle. Then or you light up a lamp, okay, oil lamp. Then when at the same time the darkness will be disappeared. At the same time the light is spread throughout the room, and you can see the whatever the things in that room. 2 processes and the 2 functions. The first function is the disappearing the darkness. The second function is the spreading the light. But same source, same thing. We call the oil lamp. We are giving 2 names. Why? By the function of disappearing or removing the darkness, we call that same element, same thing, same oil lamp, tamonuda or tamadhansi. Tama is darkness, and removing the darkness we call the tamonudo or tamadhansi in the Pali. But the same oil lamp. By considering the function of spreading the light, we name that same oil lamp Deepo, that the spreading, it's spreading the light, it's lightening the room. So, but still the same thing, it's there, that the oil lamp, same oil lamp, we can call the same oil lamp Tamonuda or Tamadhansi by considering the function of removing the darkness. And the same oil lamp, we can call the same oil lamp the Deepa by considering the function of spreading the light or the lightening the room. As the same manner, the wholesome actions, when they are appearing, when they are arising, the akusalas cannot retain in the mind. They have to go away, because that the arising the kusala chitta is the one function is removing the akusalas, removing the dirty things. in that sense we call kuccite papake akusale dhamme salayanti chalayanti kampendi vidhanseti kusala. Then removing those bad defilements, dirty things from our mind, we call the wholesome chittas, wholesome deeds, kusala, because akusala is removed, the dirty things are removed from the mind, then we call that activity or that particular mind kusala, because the akusala, the dirty things or the defilements cannot retain in the mind, they have to be removed. Then the second function of these kusala chittas, when they are arised, you feel the happiness. You are very, you can happy about that chitta or the activity. You can rejoice. The joy is there, happiness is there. We call the hadayam punatiti puñña. That means that when the kusala arises within yourself, you can feel that happiness. You are rejoicing that activity, particular activity or particular consciousness. That function, based on that function, the making happiness, making that rejoicing thing, we call that same wholesome chitta or the action puñña. But the same consciousness, same activity, we call kusala by considering the function of removing the defilements. By the same action of the consciousness, we say it's a puñña by considering the making or the developing the happiness within your mind. But the same mind you have to use in order to perform the abstaining part and the doing part. They are all together, we can say, wholesome activities, wholesome chittas. So by now we have discussed about the akusalas, and we have discussed about the dasa kusala kamma pathas, and we have discussed about the dasa Puññakiriyavatthu. So I'm going to end up today's Dhamma sermon. So I think you have got some knowledge about these akusalas and the kusalas, or wholesome things and the unwholesome things, and it would be very helpful to rectify some bad things and develop some good things within your lives. And before we go to the concentration, we should do these things. You have to give up. You have to abstain from the akusalas. You have to develop the kusalas. Then only your mind is suitable for developing the concentration. So I'm going to end up today's Dhamma talk, and we have accumulated so many wholesome things, Dhamma savana and Dhamma desana, and some like manasikara, we call the yoniso manasikara. We should transfer these merits, patidana, and the others can do the pattanumodana. So we can do another puñña by transferring these merits. So I would like to transfer these merits to our parents and our Dhamma teachers who have ordained us, who have taught Dhamma. So may they receive these merits, and may these kusala or the wholesome be a great cause to achieve their liberation as their expected way. And we should transfer these merits to all the relatives, friends who have passed away, and they are waiting, they are wishing to accept, rejoice these kind of kusalas, and may all these beings have received these kind of all the strong merits, and may they have desirable results, and may these kusalas be a very strong cause to achieve their liberation in their expected way. And also we should transfer these merits to the Deva beings and the Brahma beings, and may they have the desirable results, and may these kusalas be a strong cause to achieve their desired levels of liberations. And all the listeners, you have accumulated these Dhamma savana, yoniso manasikara, the great puññas. May you all have a very good and very healthy life, and may you be able to achieve all the good thoughts what you are having in your minds, and may these puññas, may these wholesome give you desirable results, and may you have the desirable lives until you achieve the Nibbana, and these all wholesome deeds be a great cause to achieve your desirable levels of liberation. And may you all have the blessings of the triple gems. Thank you.